I'd like to talk about three key consumer protection issues that are particularly important given the pandemic and financial crisis. The first is for-profit colleges and trade schools. We know from the last financial crisis that there was massive growth in the for-profit education industry, and that was driven by the fact that Californians were unemployed and looking to improve their lives. Unfortunately, some for-profit companies like Corinthian Colleges, which operated the Everest, Wyotech, and Heald schools, including here in San Bernardino, preyed on those students and took advantage of their hopes and their dreams. The schools invested millions in marketing and made false promises about job placement and graduation rates to lure students, and they particularly targeted veterans and GI Bill benefits. The students didn't get the educations they were promised, and many ended up saddled with student loans that they could not afford. We stopped Corinthian and put them out of business, and the Federal Trade Commission did great work pursuing DeVry, another school, and we're still fighting to get student loan debt relief to those students. But today's financial crisis has again created the perfect environment for the re-emergence of predatory for-profits. For that reason, we would urge students and their families to be on the lookout. Be aware of slick marketing pitches, limited time offers, and promises that sound too good to be true. They often are. Take time to consider your options and don't let yourself get rushed into a decision to enroll. Stop and think before you take out loans to fund your education. Know how much you'll have to borrow, how much you'll have to pay back over the life of those loans, and then have a plan for how you're going to pay it back. And if the numbers don't add up, the plan wouldn't work. Don't take the loan. Know also that for-profits are not your only option. They're able to invest millions in marketing, but community colleges, state universities, regional occupational programs or ROPs, union apprenticeship programs, and nonprofits may offer the training and education that you need at a fraction of that price. And don't go it alone. I'm a first-generation college graduate, but I had people in my community who gave me good advice about my options. Seek out the people in your family or your community who can help you understand your options. And finally, if you or someone you know is victimized, get help from legal aid and report the school to law enforcement. Second, housing. We know that tenants up and down the state are struggling to make ends meet, and the legislature recently passed Assembly Bill 3088 to protect tenants. And it stops most evictions until October 5th. It protects tenants who are in financial distress because of COVID for eviction from non-payment of rent until early next year. But it also creates a process that tenants will have to follow to take advantage of those rights, and that includes giving notice to their landlords, and for rent owing starting September 1st, paying 25% of the total owed by January 31st of 2021. If these rules sound somewhat confusing, it's because they are. And so we would say if you're a tenant, if you're threatened with eviction or you can't make your payments, get help. Contact a local legal aid organization that can provide you with advice on how to assert your rights and your protections. Equally importantly, look out for scams. We know there are predators out there who will make false promises that they can help you with your landlord or your rent in exchange for money up front, and that's not the help you need. Again, seek out local legal aid, and they can provide you appropriate advice. Know that law enforcement is on the lookout for illegal behavior, both by scammers and by predatory landlords. And we know that most landlords are honest and they're trying to comply with the law, but some are not. And legal aid and law enforcement is on the lookout. That includes practices like tenant lockouts, self-help evictions, landlords that threaten tenants with violence or deportation if they won't move out or pay, attempts to evict a tenant by falsely claiming that the tenants violated the lease terms, falsely claiming that the owner is going to move in when in reality the property is going to be sold or re-rented, or lying to tenants about their rights or to get them to sign forms that waive their rights. And finally, refusing to allow tenants to make partial payments of rent, because again, AB 3088 has a number of requirements, including partial payments of rent, and we're seeing some landlords attempt to evade that. Bottom line, if you or somebody that you know is victimized or needs advice, get help from legal aid. And if you're victimized, report the scammer or the landlord to law enforcement. Finally, I want to take a moment to talk about immigration. And these are difficult times for all of us, but they're particularly scary for Californians who are undocumented or have family members with immigration issues. Immigration scammers will prey on these families and their hopes and fears. And the Attorney General, the district attorneys, and other agencies have prosecuted cases up and down the state against scammers that lied and stole their clients' money, made false promises, or just provided incompetent service and bad advice that ended up hurting their clients in their immigration situation. If you or a loved one need immigration help, don't go to somebody who calls themselves a notario or immigration consultant. They cannot legally provide immigration advice. Instead, Go to a licensed immigration lawyer, a legitimate legal aid organization, or a nonprofit like Todak or Catholic Charities in the Inland Empire that has been authorized by the federal government to provide immigration advice. And if you or somebody you know has been victimized by a notario or immigration consultant, get help from legal aid and report the scammer to law enforcement. Also know that the Attorney General's office protects all Californians regardless of immigration status. We will never share a victim's information with federal immigration authorities. And again, to report scams or fraud to our office, you can go to oag.ca.gov/report. You can also call our office at 800-952-5225. Again, 800-952-5225.